this place is, outside of Albuquerque. So I flew in to Albuquerque, and then it's about 30 minutes outside of Albuquerque where this casino is. And it's, so it's pretty far out there. So far that it took me on Friday when I wanted to go to the grocery store, it took me about 30 minutes to get an Uber to come. And then even some of the directions I was trying to put into Uber were not registering right. Like the lady took me the complete opposite direction of where I was trying to go. It was my fault, but it was the complete opposite of where I was trying to go. So I had to go, oh no, let me re-put in the address. And then she took me there. And I was trying to get her to wait for me. I was like, is there any way? She was like, English was not her first language. I couldn't tell if she was Hispanic or not, but English was not her first language. And so I was trying to strike a deal with her. I'm like, it's really hard to get an Uber around here. I'd love it if you'd just wait about 10 minutes for me and then let me just give you cash to get me back to the hotel. But none of that was really registering with her. I needed no language barrier to get that to work out. But anyway, she left. And then it didn't take me that long to get an Uber back. It was actually very nice. But I did sit in the parking lot of a grocery store for a long time. And not a long time, but a decent amount of time, 10, 15 minutes. And I realized I like that. A lot of people like to do a lot of comics like to do things when they're on the road. They like to do touristy things. But I find that I almost like to treat the city I'm in like I live there. I like to go to the grocery store. I like to walk around. Grocery stores in different cities are still one of those things that it's different in different places. Like this grocery store was called Albertsons. I'd never heard of that. I'd never been to an Albertsons. And I walked around in there. I took it in. They had a lot of great produce. They had a lot of organic stuff, even in this kind of small part of town. And I liked just sitting out in the parking lot. I liked watching people come in. I just sat at kind of a picnic table out there and ate some of my fruit while I watched people come and go. Mm-hmm. I like that. It makes me feel like I'm somehow a part of that area in some way. It feels very America to be in a hot parking lot.
Oh, yeah.
I remember during COVID, shortly, COVID was still in pretty full effect, but I was out working. I was doing gigs, and I believe I was in San Antonio doing LOL Comedy Club. And I walked to a grocery store. I think it was a Target. That was the closest grocery store to me. And I got a few things, and then I'm just sitting out on the curb. I'm not waiting on an Uber. I just don't have anything to do. I'm just killing time. So I'm just sitting there on the curb watching people come into Target with masks on. And I just remember thinking, how crazy is it that we, regardless of what you believe, that we're right now believing there's a deadly virus that's sweeping the world. And so much so that we need protection from the air at all times. Yet we're still like, you know what? I'm going to go hit the Target real quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let's get a fun seasonal outfit and lovely smelling soaps.
That's what I just thought was so crazy because, I didn't buy into it in that same kind of way. I didn't want to get COVID. When I did get COVID, I still had a bit of anxiety about it. I was afraid of it, but I didn't buy into things in the same way that a lot of people did. But it's still like, here I am sitting out here in this parking lot, person after person coming in with a mask on, but just going into Target.
Yeah.
There can't be anything that you have to get in Target.
The cognitive dissonance was rich.
Yeah.
And honestly, a little refreshing because you got to see everybody on a mass level just kind of go crazy. And we all went crazy in our own ways, but there's a comfort in knowing, okay, there is this potential in humanity for us all to go collectively bonkers.
Yeah, and the thing about it is everybody just kind of wants to not talk about it anymore. It's like if you talk about it now, it's like that review we got. If we talk about it,
yeah,
it's like, oh, I think we've all agreed to not talk about this anymore. And it's like, why though? This was like the biggest thing to happen in our lifetime. Never in our lives was the whole country shut down in that way. Even just for 2 weeks, when they were like 2 weeks to slow the spread, it's like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, people are treating it like the elephant in the room, but it's like the elephant in the world.
Right. It's like, how do we move on completely? Now, for the most part, when I'm doing stand-up comedy, I get it. I don't want to bore the audience with just more talk about that. But I'm like, because I do want the audience to have a good time. But if we're just having a conversation here, it's just like, it is so wild that everybody's like, oh, yeah, let's not talk about that. It's like, but that's the craziest thing we've ever witnessed. And I don't want to dwell on it. But anyway, so I'm out in Albuquerque. I'm getting my feature, Adam Bush, he Ubered to the Walmart and then could not get an Uber home. He bought a bunch of groceries and then had to walk 30 minutes home because he could not get an Uber.
So y'all were in like the country?
Well, you're just on the outskirts, in New Mexico, from what I've seen, and I've drove through New Mexico I drove from Texas to Arizona through New Mexico. And the parts that I was in, it's pretty empty. I mean, it's like when I left Texas going to Mescalero, New Mexico, to the Inn of the Mountain Gods to do comedy, I went through straight up desert. Like, it's like out of a movie. I was the only car on the road for an hour, I would say. It was complete flat desert on either side of me. It was 115 degrees. Oof. I was just like, if I break down, I was riding in a car almost at 200,000 miles. I'm like, if I break down out here, I'm going to die out here. I had this seat cover on my Volvo, and it was a plastic seat cover, like kind of a pleather. And I stopped at a gas station and ripped it off the car. I was like, it's too hot. It's making me too hot.
You get hot quick and you can't handle it.
Yeah, and I stuffed it in the trash can in between the gas pumps.
Yeah. And
it was wild, right? But then when I'm leaving the Inn of the Mountain Gods, which was a pretty nice little town, they had a pretty decent little town. And then on the way from Mescalero, New Mexico to Albuquerque, I drove through some of the most beautiful mountains I had ever gone through. I mean, it was truly unbelievable. I stopped the car and tried to take a picture. The picture never did, it did not do it justice, but it was truly some of the most beautiful stuff I had seen, but still very empty. And then Albuquerque is a nice city, although I did go downtown to do radio in Albuquerque this time, and did seem not as safe as I would like a city to be. I mean, what city is safe to me? I don't know. I think they're all dangerous, but I was just like, a bit of a methy vibe down here. But it just seems like New Mexico is a bit of an empty state. So when I'm out in the part of town or the part of the state where the casino is at, it's really empty. And so I think, those kind of casinos exist and do really well because, people in the surrounding areas, they don't have a lot to do. So they can, go down to these casinos and hang out because there's nothing really going on around them.